Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 219 of Album of the Day, in which for today's album review I'm going to be covering a genre that I don't typically cover here on this channel, which is metal, and in this case, stoner metal, or stoner doom metal, whatever you want to call it. This is one of the bands that pretty much are pioneers, innovators of the genre. That have been around for a little while, then kind of went on hiatus for a little while because some of their other members did other bands and projects, but they recently made their unexpected comeback in 2018. Of course, I'm talking about the band known as Sleep, and I'm here to review their 420 comeback record, which was released on April 20th, 2018, and the album is called The Sciences. Which, I'm not really a big metal fan, but this new Sleep album totally jams, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Over 2 metal albums have made it on my year-end list, and there's also another one that I kind of heard considered a metal album by some people, so that makes it 3. It's a 3. So that shows I've, developed a little more appreciation for the genre. Really cool album cover on here. As you can see, it's like an astronaut that seems to be consuming a little bit of marijuana in his suit, also known as the Marijuanaut. And there's the back. Really cool artwork on here. There's 6 tracks on it. It's over 53 minutes because most of them are pretty long. And Third Man Records put out this record. That's a little unexpected for a metal album. And there's the gatefold there, which this is really interesting photo. At first, it may look like a mundane photo of somebody's breakfast, but if you look a little closer, some of the glasses and stuff like that actually look more like bongs, and and you can actually see a little dish of that wacky weed going on in there too. And you see that the toast looks kind of burnt or something like that. And here's a little insert. It's got the lyrics. And then there's the full band and the liner notes, which, the band consists of Alice Cisneros, Matt Pike, and Jason Roeder, who is their new drummer that recently joined that band. Hang on a second. And then there's the CD. Yeah, and that's the new Sleep album CD, The Sciences. Speaking of The Sciences, the album opens up with the title track, The Sciences, which is like a little intro for the album. Album featuring some really cool kind of astronaut-like sort of distortion sounds provided by bass and guitars. Enough anticipation to get you excited about what sort of comes after. It's also punctuated nicely by a kind of booming bass drum before it eventually sort of cuts into the sound effect of a bong hit, and then the song Marijuanaut's theme, which this song, it kicks ass, I'll tell you that. Like just the way that the guitars and the bass and the drums all work together is incredible. Like incredible, and it's got a totally badass riff. Like definitely very killer right there. And Alice Cisneros comes in with some very chant-like sort of vocals, which are a little, less in the vein of like kind of older Sleep as opposed, and rather like what he's done in his other band, as he's sort of showing as they're sort of showing like worship of things like Tony Iommi, the guitarist for Black Sabbath and stuff like that. And also sort of introducing the Marijuanaut character with lyrics like "Admixture sustained smoke suit is home, home, and now riff beacon signal is received." And I think it's really clever how they sort of create this whole planet in their version of outer space. It's called like Planet Iomia, and then the song has a pretty incredible sort of instrumental part at the middle. Really nice bass solo in the middle. Some really cool Ward-esque drumming, and a really awesome guitar solo towards the end too, which is kind of like doubled, and you can definitely hear the like tapping on the strings effect for sure. Excuse me. It's definitely a great sort of like opener to this whole concept album that is the Sciences. And then following that is the song Sonic Titan, which is actually an old song. Like, there's two songs on here that are actually like older compositions that one of them, which is Sonic Titan, has a live version of it already released. But of course, the rest of the album is like new compositions. Positions. I'll get into the other older song in a moment. There is a totally awesome, totally awesome studio version of Sonic Titan to be found here on this album. I mean, it's definitely a long song with a kind of long-winded first half, but yet it still manages to like leave me engaged and just jamming and air guitaring the whole time. Guitaring the whole time, and the way that the drums are timed with like the bass and the guitars sounds really good as well. And then the song transitions into like this really cool kind of psychedelic bass solo, and this like really tight midsection that does feature just a couple of lines repeated twice, but some like amazing sort of like guitar melodies going on here. So before it eventually transitions back into its earlier section, and then it goes into this like pretty out of this world guitar solo. Like Matt Pike really does show himself to be a great guitar player. Really does show that even though the band is 15 years away from their last album, they still definitely haven't lost their skills, which are like kind of honed in that much more thanks to some of the other bands they've been in. Alice Cisneros was an Ohm, and also Matt Pike has really honed in his guitar talents with the band High on Fire, which you can hear a little bit of that going on in this new Sleep record. The next track, Giza Butler, opens up with this kind of desert-like sort of intro with a really cool westerny acoustic guitars and some kind of psychedelic bass and guitar riffs, and the drums sound a little more like a trap kit a little bit because it's not as heavy on cymbals and you're hearing more tambourines going on. it has a little bit of like kind of a tribal Native American feel to like beginning of the track, before it eventually goes into the straight ahead stony metal instrumental. Yeah, mental, and this definitely may be my favorite song on the record lyrically. I love all the imagery that Alice Cisneros creates of like dinosaurs that are like named after, marijuana and stuff like that. Stuff like Bong Water of Life, the Maudub Messiah, the Kifsats Hatcherach, the Bong Jabbar. He creates this whole new sort of world pretty much on this record. And you definitely can hear the Sabbath worship in here, not just in its music, not just on musical fronts, but also in its lyrics. The line of like, "Up from the milk crave throne, on the Sabbath day walks alone." You see, I'm imitating the chant-like vocals here. So and sort of likening marijuana to like this thing that's kind of like sort of like worshipped by like these little like gods that he's creating on here. So and stuff like that. Definitely a very cool track. One of the highlights here on this record for sure. And of course, like most of the tracks, it does have a really cool outro to it. The song Antarctican Thawed is the other track on here that is an older composition. But I don't know if there's like an already released version of this song or if it's just one they've been playing live a lot. This song is the only track on here where the vocals aren't more like a chant and more like kind of straight ahead, kind of like metal vocals, but not necessarily like screaming or anything like that, like you'd find in some metal bands. This is a good song, but I will say that this one is probably my least favorite track here because I do find that like when it gets into that midsection and the riff goes din, 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 it's a little underwhelming in my opinion. And also, I wish that the song weren't so long-winded. At points, it does get a little boring. Of course, except for that really good intro and that killer guitar solo towards the end. Lyric-wise, I think it's pretty well written. Creating a little conclusion for the story of this album. I really like how, even though the song isn't new, it still fits right in with kind of the lyrical subjects of the rest of the album. Though, I still don't know, what the heck, the Matterhorn or any of that stuff is. But the album does have a really cool closing instrumental track on here, The Botanist, which I definitely do think closes out the record on the most satisfying note. Notes, and I do really like that intro for the song, which sounds very much like something you'd want to listen to out in the desert, pretty much, with its like jangly acoustic guitars and kind of film-like guitars and drums. It's funny, I'm wearing a Queens of the Stone Age t-shirt in this review because I just realized that section actually does sound just like this Mosquito song, which is the last song off of Songs for the Deaf by Queens of the Stone Age, but in a good way. And it does have some really triumphant, kind of cinematic guitar solos in it as well. And I think it's really cool, that moment where all of a sudden the song kind of ends abruptly, and but then we get some of the best drumming on the entire record. That's basically accompanied by little more than a bass line and just a little bit of feedback, but it's definitely, there couldn't have been like a more satisfying outro for this record. So yeah, like The Sciences definitely is a very strong comeback. I mean, it definitely was pretty unexpected. Hardcore fans would sort of, see this as like another great step forward for the band and not just rehashing of old ideas. I mean, they're not trying to do a sequel to Dope Smoker, their last record, or anything like that. Like, they still, like, their like, kind of stony metal music, like, still feels very fresh. So it makes sense to me why this record is really high on a lot of metalheads, like, year-end lists for the year. So, yeah, I'm gonna give my final score for Sleep's The Sciences is 8.5 out of 10. Check this record out. It's definitely a kind of record that will definitely appeal, of course, to, the hardcore metal fan. But even if you're not really a big metal person, I think there's still plenty of things to really get into. If the fast-paced, like, very, like, head-banging metal isn't really your thing. This album isn't really like that. It's a more kind of meditative, subtle kind of thing, so, it would definitely appeal to the casual metal fan, which of course does include me. Anyway, that's my review for The Sciences, the new album by Sleep. I'll see you for episode 220.